Live from Utah's Wasatch Front, the pulse of the Mountain West, where the issues that shape your life meet the truth that sets you free. Across Utah, across the Republic, and around the world, welcome. This is KMMU.
Hello, Main Street Media, Utah. This is Talk with Jon. Looking forward to being with you here today and looking forward to chatting with you. And I'm going to see if I can rearrange this a little bit better, but don't know that I can. My backdrop. All right, no big deal. So let's get this party started, as it were. Looking forward to being with you for the next roughly hour and a half. I'm going to introduce my guest here just momentarily, but first, let's get this show off by me giving out the show prayer and the show mantra, at least my show prayer. Prayer of my heart when it comes to doing this show. No need to bow your head or close your eyes. I hope my show is a gift back to my forefathers, the founding fathers, and may it be an acceptable token to our Father above. Then the show mantra. Where there is liberty, there is the Spirit of Christ. Where the Spirit of Christ is, there will be liberty. And the greater the Spirit of Christ, the greater liberty will be. That is the rough mantra of this show. And that's what we're about. And that's why I love the guests that I'm about to, the guests that I'm going to be bringing on. Let's bring him in now. My good friend, David Pine. David, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Hey, Jon, great to be with you.
It's good to have you. Good to have you, my friend. All right, folks, I'm going to give his bio out real quickly. So I'm reminded constantly that we have new listeners and new viewers coming in on a weekly basis. So not everybody knows who David Pine is, even though I feel like he's a very good friend of mine. I've known him for several years now, and just a great patriot. So David T. Pine, Esquire, is a former U.S. Army Combat Arms and Headquarters Staff Officer who was in charge of armaments cooperation with the former Soviet Union, Eastern Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and the Americas from 2000 to 2003, with an MA in National Security Studies from Georgetown University. He is the former president and current deputy executive director of the Task Force on National and Homeland Security. He recently served as defense and foreign policy advisor to former Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy. He has also co-authored the best-selling new book, Catastrophe Now, America's Last Chance to Avoid an EMP Disaster, and his new book, Restoring Strategic Deterrence, will be published sometime this year. He serves as the editor of the Real War newsletter at dpine.substack.com. That's dpyne.substack.com, and previously served as a contributor to the National Interest. Also, you can find him on X at America First. First is spelled out FIRST, Con, CON, for conservative. David, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you being here today.
You bet. Excited to be on.
So, you have, I definitely want to go into your Substack that you did beginning of March, if I remember correctly. Want to do that. But when is your book going to be coming out? Do you have a release date yet scheduled?
So I've had some issues with my co-author, and she's the principal author. I'm kind of the second author that would appear on the title page, book cover, and just some personal issues she's going through that have delayed publication. So I don't have a concrete date. The tentative date I think would be probably July.
Okay.
But that's TBD at this point.
Got it. Well, let's hope that she is able to get those things taken care of in her world. We'll pray for her that things will go well for her and she'll be able to get that taken care of. I do want to mention, folks, I want to mention his Substack that he put out on March 5th, where you can go to dpyne.substack.com. Trump starts a dangerous, unnecessary, and unprovoked regional war of choice with Iran. David, I want to get to that, but I kind of want to hold off on getting to that. I want to hit, if it's okay with you, because I think we're going to leave. I want to do my best to leave as much room as we can for that, but there's also some other things that I want to hit, and some of those are domestic. And I think that, and your unique perspective on this, I think, is very important, because what's happening in Cuba, that is not something that I had put as a list of topics, but I do want to get your thoughts there with the power issues that they are having. And also, so let me just break into what I shared I wanted to cover with David when it came to the domestic front. And I realized that that's international, but they're right off our shore, so I'm going to lump it in with the domestic. Then also, there's 2 shootings in the same day. One was at a Jewish school, another was in the university in Virginia. What are midterms looking like? And do you think the CIA is going after Tucker Carlson? And then we also, let's not forget the Austin shooter. And all 3 of these, it was very interesting. Every single one of them, none of them, it was, someone who was a Muslim or anything along those lines. It took all of them took a little while to come out. I mean, it was pretty obvious almost from the get-go. But it was funny how the mainstream media didn't want to do that until significantly into it, when the I'm going to say the new alternative media was making it very clear who it was. So where do you want to start first, David?
Well, I mean, there's so much. Obviously, Tucker Carlson, really the whole Iran war is just it's consuming every spare moment of my time. Trying to digest this deluge of news that's coming out, and of course, there's so much fake news. And interestingly, the most fake news network isn't CNN or MSNBC; it's Fox News. Fox News is reporting fake news about the war 24/7. They don't have a voice of reason. They don't have Tucker Carlson. 99% of congressional Republicans voted to give a blank check to President Trump to wage this forever war on Iran indefinitely. And so there's been a concerted effort by, I'm just about to call the Trump presidency the Trump regime, because he's behaving like an autocrat. As you mentioned, he waged war against Venezuela, abducted their first family, killed the first family of Iran. Now he's demanding that the president of Communist Cuba resign as part of any deal. I mean, certainly, if he's able to bring true freedom to Cuba, I'd be all for it. But as I strongly suspect that his remedy for Cuba is going to be very similar to one in Venezuela, where he supports communism, the communists remaining in power. He just wants some kind of symbolic victory where the communist president resigns or goes into exile in Russia or something like that, and then his vice president takes over, and Trump claims that the vice president's a good guy and doing great stuff. So that's pretty much what he's done with.
We worked out.
Tells you Rodriguez.
I called him. I came to a great understanding. He's a great man. He told me I was so great, so smart.
Trump loves. He loves them. Those communists. He says Xi Jinping. He had a love. He fell in love with Kim Jong Un, little rocket man. Who's diminutive dictator, murderous dictator, has killed about 2 million of his own people. But he's to Trump, he's great. Xi Jinping is great. They're best friends. I mean, the stuff that he says it's ridiculous. If he's saying it about a guy like Putin, Putin's not a mass murderer, and he's someone who we want as an ally. So I'm all for him praising Putin. But when he praises Xi Jinping and Kim Jong Un, and I mean, that's just beyond the pale.
Yeah. Well, folks, you're watching this on KMMU. I've got David Pine joining me right now on kmmu.org. Feel free to go to that website. And then once you go to the website, you can click on the 3 links for both YouTube, as well as X and Rumble. And please like and subscribe with us there, and share the show. So I want to get to your thoughts on next. Let's hit your thoughts on these Muslims that are they lone shooters, lone wolves? Do you think they were just angry at the Ayatollah being taken out, and what's happening in Iran, or do you think that they could be sleeper cells, spinoffs, either spinoffs or someone that is being told, "Hey, go and do this"?
Well, it's interesting. One of them's, according to Israel, was I think a Hezbollah commander. I think that's probably bogus, but they're claiming that. I think another one, or maybe the same one, is ISIS connections. So Hezbollah, of course, is an Iranian proxy, and ISIS is an Iranian enemy. But certainly, the way President Trump has been behaving, talking about destroying Iran, of course, bombing their cities, killing off their first family, including the wife and sister of the current supreme leader, Mujtaba Khamenei, he's behaving in, I think, a very dishonorable and disgraceful fashion. And it's encouraging terrorism. He was asked, what do you think about, should Americans be afraid of being, killed off in terrorist attacks or cyber attacks? And Trump's response was, I guess so. People, some people die in war. so he clearly is not concerned about how many Americans will be mass murdered by terrorists, Iranian-backed terrorist attacks in retaliation for our attacks on them. He's not worried about how many thousands of Americans, maybe tens of thousands of American soldiers will be killed, in an invasion of Iran. Reportedly, he's, considering giving the go-ahead to sending the U.S. Marines for amphibious landings on 3 Iranian-held islands, including Karg Island, and running the gamut of, hundreds, perhaps even thousands of Iranian anti-ship missiles. Missile boats, also submarines. They have a lot of submarines and a lot of missile boats we haven't destroyed yet. It's only their larger ships, frigates and corvettes, that we've successfully sunk. So this is really a missile war, and in a missile war, the side with the most missiles typically wins, and in this case, that's Iran. Iran, even according to Trump, Iran started the war with 8,000 missiles. I think we started with, we had 3,000 JASSMs, maybe about the same number of Tomahawks. And I think we've expended probably 3,000 to 4,000 of those. So we still have probably about 35 to 40% of our pre-war missile stockpile. And then we're running out of missile defense interceptors. So Iran is going to be able to outfight us in that area. We of course also have heavy bombers, but if we want to fly those over Iran, they might get shot down. Almost all of our aircraft, we don't have air superiority according to the Pentagon. We're getting close, hoping to get there in the next few weeks. If we're successful, then maybe we could, bomb Iran with heavy bombers and smart bombs, and not worry about them getting shot down. But Trump, he just doesn't seem to have a care in the world except to follow the orders of his Israeli paymaster, Benjamin Netanyahu.
Okay, I definitely want to get into that. I want to get into that a little bit more. But first, I want to go. Okay, so, yeah, I want to get your thoughts. We're going to hit Iran a little bit more, but I want to get your thoughts on this. Do you think it's an actual terror group that is the was it from a terrorist group, or do you just think these were people that were ticked off with what was happening, or do you think that there some form of state sponsorship spun them up to go out and do these attacks?
There were reports that I ran about a week ago. We intercepted a signal that Iran had given some kind of green light to their sleeper cells here in the U.S. So I think it's very likely that both those attacks are connected to Iran. Just because they fought for ISIS and fought against Iran previously doesn't mean that they've been recruited by Iran. Because they're Sunni Muslims versus Shiites. They both hate America because they have reason to hate America because we've been bombing and invading their countries for the last 25 years. So I think it's very possible that even the reported ISIS terrorists that, I think it attempted to, to shoot or kill a bunch of innocents, maybe including Jews, could have been Iranian sponsored. And the thing is, the neocons are using everything that Iran has done to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, to sink oil tankers, to hit our allies, to hit Israel. They're using all of this as kind of a post-attack justification for why we had to fight Iran, ignoring the fact that Iran wouldn't have done any of those things if Trump hadn't killed their first family and killed 1,200 civilians to date over the last 2.5 weeks. Bombed their cities, bombed their oil centers, bombed their desalinization plants, schools and hospitals. We killed 150 Iranian girls, elementary school girls, and Trump kind of joked about it. Claimed that it must have been Iran with the Tomahawk, the U.S. Tomahawk that we've never sold to Iran that they couldn't possibly have. So there's everything he said about the war and about Iran has really been a lie. And he's it was in 2008 he was interviewed on CNN by Wolf Blitzer, and he famously stated that the worst mistake that a president's ever made is to fight a forever war in the Middle East, and he should be impeached over it. And I agree 100%. I think I agree with that Trump. I agree with the 2008 Trump. I agree with the 2016 and the 2020 and the 2024 Trump that ran on the issues that I cared about, promised peace. He promised an end to America's forever wars. He promised no more regime change wars. He promised to stop wars from, new wars from breaking out and end the ones we already have. So he's gone against all of that. He's joined the deep state. He's basically a cadet and robber at this point, and he needs to be replaced. The sooner the better for America's safety and security.
I want to get into this a little bit deeper, but there is one more piece that I want to hit. Tucker Carlson said that the CIA, now he didn't say how he knew this, that I'm aware of. He did not specify how he knew, but the CIA is investigating him and possibly going to take legal action on him. To that point, I'm going to say, of course, yes, they are surveilling him. In fact, I would say, Tucker, when have they probably not been surveilling you? But I will also say it's wrong for the CIA to be getting involved with Tucker Carlson, his actions as being a journalist, and I think it's wrong that he's being surveilled. I mean, he's in the United States. There's no reason for him to be surveilled. That is against the that is not the CIA supposed to be. You want to claim that the FBI should be doing it? At least you're on a slightly stronger footing, but even then, I don't think that they should be surveilling Tucker Carlson. I want your thoughts on what's happening with Tucker Carlson. Do you believe him? And I am going to bring up a little bit of the neocon counters. I'm going to bring up a little bit of the words in this interview of like Ben Shapiro and so forth, and some of that wing, because the bottom line is I've got friends that are, I'm sure, just like you, I'm sure you have this as well. You've got friends that are reaching out to you and saying, what should I think and what should I believe? And I, frankly, somewhat, David, I'm a little bit there myself, trying to think, what should I believe and what should we do? Because the bottom line is, the nature of war is to lie. And the United States, the government is, that happened in World War II. It started in World War II, probably happened in World War I. So the bottom line is when there is these type of actions, it's very incumbent on the American public to do their best to persuade their elected representatives, and to persuade them as much as they can to do the right and the correct things. One thing that we've been praying at in our home, I know that different churches have been praying for, bottom line, I consider myself first a Christian, probably a real lousy Christian, bottom line. But I'm a Christian first, believer in Christ. I try to follow Christ. And then secondly, I'm a conservative. I believe in America first. Republican. In fact, I'm going to be going to the caucus night, just like you. You're going to be running caucus night. In fact, folks, he's got to leave just a little bit early. So to those out there listening, please go. And we need you there, folks. This is not the time to take your ball and go home. You need to go out and you need to stand up, because we've got our own issues here in Utah. And we need to get elect good representatives for us here locally and back in Washington. But what are your thoughts on, do you buy that the CIA is, looking into Tucker Carlson? Do you buy it? Do you believe it? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the CIA, it's the same deep state CIA that existed before Trump took over. The only difference is, there were a few musical chairs at the top, some political positions. John Ratcliffe took it over. When he took it over, he promoted all the folks that were, pro-Ukraine war, and all the ones that opposed the Ukraine war, he demoted or got rid of. So the CIA is chock full of deep staters, deep state neocons, neoliberals. It's corrupt. It's weaponized against conservatives. We don't like to think that. We don't like to think that the Trump administration is weaponizing the government against conservatives like Biden has. And I would argue that he hasn't done it to the extent that Biden has yet. But we've seen that he's really bought by Israel, and Israel has basically said they want Tucker Carlson arrested because he's the most effective pro-America voice, patriot voice against Trump's war for Israel, a greater Israel in Iran.
So I have not seen that. I have not seen that. Do I believe that to be true? Absolutely. The JPL leader the JPL leader went over to Israel and started talking about, hey, we've got to, get control of the narrative. And almost, I'm like, the way he was talking, I'm like, are you talking about taking people out? Or are you just talking about trying to persuade? And that's one thing that they're really good at, is they're really good at stirring their people up. And so the Israeli factions and frankly even the neocon factions of the United States that's how they get their dollars. Let's stir people up as opposed to tell them the truth. So do you think so? Have you heard specifically information saying that, or is that what Tucker Carlson is relaying?
Well, I think it's multi-source, but certainly Tucker Carlson is one of the main sources for that. But Tucker Carlson, he's been read out of MAGA by President Trump because he opposes the war. I mean, he went to just like Charlie Kirk did before he was assassinated under mysterious circumstances. Joe Kent, you may have heard, the National Counterintelligence Director, resigned today with the scathing letter.
That was one of the talking points I wanted to talk to you about. So he put out he resigned, folks, and who did he specifically mention in his resignation letter, David?
Well, he mentioned that President Trump had been tricked and deceived by the Israel lobby faction within his administration into believing that Iran was an imminent threat. When you and I, I've discussed on this program why I think that Iran was not an imminent threat, why I think that they were a rational and responsible nuclear power that's had nuclear weapons for a decade. They have super EMP satellites. Even after their 50 top leaders were eliminated, well, not 50 top, but 50 of their senior leaders were eliminated. They didn't super EMP the U.S. They didn't launch a massive cyber attack against the U.S. These are really weapons of last resort that they would only use if their regime was truly on the verge of being overthrown. So this, if Trump engages in a full-scale ground invasion of Iran, I think we would be guaranteed to see a massive cyber attack in the U.S. that could take us out. That's why it's so critical that we rein in Trump. His letter, Joe Kent's letter, was all about telling Trump that he needs to rein it in. He needs to end the war as soon as possible. The destiny of our country is in his hands. He holds the cards. Appealing to his, whatever is left of his patriotism, which he seems not to have anymore, only patriotism for Israel, not America. It was a one-page letter, but it was full of red meat, and I really loved it. I think Joe Kent is an American war hero. He's an America First conservative hero. He talked about how. Just him coming out against the Israeli lobby and, tricking and deceiving President Trump. I think this would be a quick and easy war, and then he would get, his approval ratings would go way up, and he'd keep Republican control of both houses of Congress. I think it's going to be the exact opposite in November.
Okay, well, let's get into more into those questions that I had specifically about what's happening internationally. So one thing that we haven't heard a lot from is his son. So supposedly his son was a big tweeter, texter, a big on X. His brother-in-law seems to be missing, and Netanyahu really hasn't been out in the public very much at all until recently. There's major questions on whether it was even AI, him going and buying some coffee. Kind of makes me, maybe, okay, it's possible. Maybe that's the ultimate statement of I really don't care what's going on. We're totally fine. But I want to hit your thoughts along those lines on Netanyahu. Is it possible that he actually could have been hit by an Iranian strike?
Yeah, it's very possible. Iran, has, according to some recent Blockbuster news accounts, the Trump administration has covered up the last 2 weeks. They've covered up the extent to which Iran's ballistic missiles have been extremely accurate. They've done tremendous damage to U.S. military bases. They've destroyed ballistic missile defense radars, reducing our warning time from 30 minutes to 1 minute. That's why when you see all the videos of Iranian missiles coming in, there's very few missile defense interceptors coming in to intercept them. In some cases, none at all. We're just absorbing their bombardments, essentially. I do think that Iran claimed that they used a new long-range missile. I can't remember the designation, but it was as a medium-range missile, I think with a range of about 1,000 miles, and they reportedly used it against one of Netanyahu's kind of underground command centers, with a 2,000-pound warhead, really their largest warheads that they have, and with the cluster munitions as well. So it's unclear, whether they could have penetrated. I don't think his command center was really all that deep, but I think it's certainly possible that Netanyahu was wounded in the attack. Some have said even that he was killed, and the two reported appearances that he's had have just been videos with no kind of bystanders or rather any independent news media to kind of confirm that. So I think it's likely that he's still alive. It's possible that any wounds that he had were minor. So I don't want to, mislead people that I know for a fact that he's dead or seriously wounded, because I don't. But the fact is, Iran does have the capability to reach out and touch Netanyahu. Just they don't have the capabilities that the U.S. and Israel have, but they do have a capacity to make that happen.
I think one of the reasons why Netanyahu is probably not dead is because I think they would try to use that as a rallying cry in Israel and also in America. So that's one reason why I would lean towards he's probably not dead, but like you said, very likely he could be injured, and it could be severe injury. It could be some type of brain injury or something along those lines. That's there's not been anything with his voice in it as well, or at least not as you shared. It's not like there's the international press pull that's surrounding him like he often has, right? There's nothing along those lines that's surrounding him. All right,
Yeah,
so let's go.
He missed one of those National Security Council meetings, which he never does. So
Yes,
there was no excuse for why he was gone. They, it didn't say that he was on some kind of diplomatic mission or visiting with the commanders. It just said that he was a no-show. So that was very suspicious in and of itself.
I want to say that there was two. There was one that was canceled as well. So there was one that he did a no-show, and then if I heard on another outlet that there was one that was canceled, another one that was canceled. So the fact that he's just missing one and no one has an explanation for that, something funny's going on. Okay, so let me go into a few of the topics that we've already covered. Joe Kent, but also are we going to have a more radical? So here are some of the other talking points, and I don't know that we'll get to all of them, but there's a few that I definitely think we should. As this war continues, are we going to have a more radical Iran regime? U.S. General Ford entering General Ford entering 10 months of deployment. What type of problem is that? Why did Trump think that he could have won this war in 2 weeks? NATO not coming to help, and should the U.S. be in the Middle East at all? Iran saying that they will let other countries' ships go through that have not joined the war, basically, and the only ships that they're saying that they really will target is Israel and U.S. ships through the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. war supplies are being weakened. And how is this going to affect our situation with Russia and China? Is Russia and China suffering much at all from this? And do they really care what's happening? And how much of a difference is this for China making with their oil situation? So which one of those would you like to hit first?
Well, there's no way I can remember the 12 different issues you just mentioned, but so I'll go from memory. You can prod me from there.
Okay.
Yeah. In terms of, President Trump, he actually stated just this past week that, you can make a good argument, quote unquote, to get us out of that we shouldn't even be here, referring to the Middle East, referring to the U.S. and the Middle East. So he basically said that, if we, there's a good argument why the U.S. should have pulled out all of its troops, not only not had a war with Iran, pulled out all 50,000 of its troops out of the Middle East. And that's the old Trump. That's the Trump that we knew and loved, and the one that we voted for, and the one we hope will come back. Because of course, Trump's nothing if not a flip-flopper, and unfortunately, he's been flip-flopping in the direction of the liberals and the neocons, the deep state, over the past 9 months. But there's always that hope. There's always a hope that he'll flip-flop back to who he was when he was inaugurated, which was a great, brilliant, conservative, America First patriot. And during the first 3.5 months of his second term, and during his entire first term, he was a peace president. He was someone who would not. In fact, he was such a peace president. He fired Mike Waltz for advocating the exact same thing that he just did. Mike Waltz said, I've been briefing Netanyahu and helping to coach him to he didn't say this, but that's what we found out, is he was coaching Netanyahu to what to say to Trump, and he was feeding fake Israeli intelligence to Trump to try to get him to attack way back in April of 2025 to have this massive bombing strike against Iran, and he was fired over it. And Vice President JD Vance was the one who got Trump successfully to fire it. And we can see how the power has shifted. If you see in the White House between the America First wing of the administration and the neocon wing, the neocon wing is really dominant. You know, it's really just taken over. Hegseth has defected from the America First wing to the neocon wing. He used to be a voice of reason, a voice for peace. So really,
Rubio starting to win. I'm going to say Rubio's starting to win. What Rubio has always stood for. I'm going to say Rubio seems to be in much more control of the narrative than JD Vance was just up until recently. So let's go down this rabbit hole for just a few minutes, and then what are you? I have a lot of people reaching out to me just upset with Trump. Some freaking out, others that are like, you know, let's bomb Iran, right? You know, let's just blow them off the face of the earth. And one of the thoughts that I have with Donald Trump is, I think his narcissist ego is, if you know how to play it and you have enough power of your own, you can win. And who is the one? And I think Donald Trump is being heavily manipulated. Who do you think is? How much of that is Netanyahu? How much of that is within his own regime? Is that more internally within his own cabinet, or is that his funders, you know, supporters, the people that put him in, that gave him the money and contributed to his campaign? Or how much of that is file playing into this? So I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are, because I think that's one of the, if we could find out who's the puppet string puller, or who's the manipulator, who's manipulating the most, I think we would have a better chance of getting Trump back to the old Trump we saw.
Yeah, before I answer that, I just want to, before I forget, I want to do a quick plug for this Iran war debate that I'm doing at the University of Utah at the Hinckley Institute of Politics this Friday night from 7 to 9 p.m. That's going to be live stream on the Hinckley Institute for Politics YouTube site. And it's going to be a 3-on-3 debate. I'm listed as the lead debater against the war. There's a pro-war faction, and they're all part of this national security group that I have on Facebook, a messenger group. So we're all friends, but we disagree very vehemently. But with regards to your question, I think that Susie Wiles is probably the head Israeli agent. She's actually a former paid campaign consultant for the Netanyahu regime. Israel. So, she's really been, she reportedly really knows how to manipulate Trump. She did an interview in Vanity Fair in which she talked about how President Trump has kind of an alcoholic personality. Her father was an alcoholic, so she knew how to manipulate her dad because she was with him a lot. And Trump is he's reportedly very impulsive. He obviously, if you praise him and kiss his butt enough, then you can kind of lead him in the wrong direction. So he's very prone to that as well, been manipulated that way. And he's also a very, Trump is, for all his claims to be a peace president, he loves war. This is a president who loves war. He's militarized every aspect of our foreign policy. He's trying to go to war, use the U.S. military in multiple places at the same time, bombing and invading countries, regime change, blockading Venezuela. How many months has it been since we got rid of Maduro? We're still at war with Venezuela. He didn't finish that war. It's an open-ended conflict. We're blockading them. Now he's trying to do the same thing to Cuba, trying to isolate them. And he's using the CIA, just as he used the CIA to get the Iranian people, 1 million Iranians, to take to the streets against the regime, only to be brutally crushed and arrested by the Islamist regime. He's starting to do the same thing in Cuba, and it's kind of a plan. And it's all regime change. And if we didn't use direct U.S. military forces, I might not be so opposed to it. It's it's the fact that he's in two countries now, in Venezuela and Iran. He's trying to do regime change with U.S. military forces that I'm principally opposed to. But he's a real hothead, and he loves to bomb and invade countries. He talks like Hitler. He says that I'm not going to end this war on Iran until they unconditionally surrender, until they let me pick their leaders, until they let me take over the oil. Basically, he's telling Iran, either you let me take over your country and rule you as an imperial U.S. colony, or else I'm going to destroy. And then he said this, or I will, he's going to destroy Iran so that they'll never ever be able to rebuild as a country. So he's threatening them with total annihilation, perhaps implying the use of nuclear weapons. So he is totally unhinged. I don't think he'll use nuclear weapons, but he's kind of implied that in terms of his language against Iran, and really just revealing that he's also talked about the Iranian people as having bad genes, inferior genes, they're inferior race. So he's racist. He's talking in Churchillian. He even today he pointed to the bust of Churchill in the White House Oval Office and said, Churchill's my model. Well, Churchill was an imperialist. He loved the British Empire. He loved to take over, invade other countries, and he was a notorious racist. He was a white supremacist. Do I think Trump is a white supremacist? I wouldn't say that, but he certainly speaks in racist terms from time to time. Not against blacks necessarily, but certainly against Muslims and Arabs and Persians. We've seen a lot of that. So I think he's off the rails, and I would love to see him. Probably the best thing that could come out of this is if the war could go badly enough that Trump, without attacking the U.S. homeland, that Trump would be replaced, impeached and removed from office with some patriots in the Senate Republican caucus, so we could J.D. Vance could take over as president and lead us into a new era of peace and prosperity in America.
So what I'm hearing is they want to impeach Donald Trump and J.D. Vance at the same time and remove them both.
Because then future House Speaker Jeffries would take over. That's just not going to happen. There's not going to be the votes to impeach J.D. Vance. He had nothing to do with this war. He was the voice of reason, trying to tell Trump not to do it. Okay.
Is there any next thing that we're also hearing is that there is being talk of bringing in the Marines and taking the island over. I forget the name of the island that's just right off the coast of Iran. Pardon me?
Karg Island?
Yes. And bringing in the Marines and also the an airborne division. And I'm going, this sounds like one of the worst ideas I've ever heard. My concern is that they would, once they get in, they could be totally wiped out. What do you think the chances are of that coming to pass? At the very least, not necessarily them being wiped out, but them boots on the ground in Iran on that specific island.
Well, I think the chances increase with every passing day the war continues, because Trump has fallen into what Professor Pape calls the escalation trap, where he's unable to extricate himself from the war because as Putin found out the hard way, you can win a war, but the other side has to admit defeat. If they decide to keep fighting it after they've been defeated militarily, the war can drag on forever unless you're willing to apply decisive force, which Putin wasn't willing to do initially in the opening weeks of the war, in which he surrounded Kyiv within 2 miles of the city limits from 3 directions, and really has not been willing to do since. So, this war, if I was a betting man, I think there's a really good chance that this war will continue, assuming we don't get destroyed, or we don't nuke Iran, or we don't invade them with 500,000 troops. Actually, I think even if we did, I think there's still a good chance it could last 3 years. I think Governor Newsom or whoever becomes president after 2028, it's most likely to be a Democrat, thanks to Trump. Is probably going to end the war. But essentially,
you actually think they'll end the war? So this would be my guess. If a Democrat comes in, I could see them just saying, "Hey, we have to continue it." Now it's possible they wouldn't, but I could see this. I see this as being, this is the power pullers, the powers that be, the ones that control the two wings of the same bird of prey. I see that this is a war that they want, and they want to have to continue going. I could be wrong. Maybe it's just straight neocon in Israel only, but I think it's, my guess is, I think it's all the power players want this, no matter who's in power. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so the Democrats have been voting as a bloc in Congress, almost to a man and a woman, against the war. They've been voting for the War Powers Resolution, which would prevent the president from any further offensive military action until it's specifically authorized by Congress. But you're right. I mean, they could pull a Trump and say, okay, this was Biden's war in Ukraine. Now it's going to be my war in Ukraine. I'm going to fight it for the next 10 years, because that's essentially what Trump decided to do with his 10-year security agreement with Ukraine. But I think that the greater chance is that they would pull back, that they would, if we had troops in the country, they would just negotiate a deal and accept whatever disadvantageous terms that Iran was offering. So right now, Iran is offering to end the war essentially with one major requirement, essentially. So Trump has been trying to end the war since night one of the war. He realized he bit off more than he could chew after the first night when U.S. missiles rained down on the carrier USS Abraham Lincoln. And I think those were subsonic cruise missiles. So something that we could shoot down, but they came pretty close, I guess. He's been trying to end the war, but Iran has rejected all of his ceasefire offers. And he, of course, is offering essentially a status quo peace where we would return to the status quo before, similar to the 12-day war, where he basically caved to Iran that they could keep their regime, they could keep their nuclear weapons program, they could keep their ballistic missile arsenal. And that's, I think, essentially what he offered to Iran. But this time, we've made it personal by killing off their first family and their supreme leader, who's basically, from LDS standpoint, he's essentially the prophet of their religion, as well as
the Pope
president, right? Exactly, the Pope. So he's a martyr now, and Iran understands that Trump is duplicitous. He can't be trusted. He gives a green light to Israel Netanyahu to bomb Iran at will. So, and he's during peace negotiations, he assassinates their entire leadership, or as many leaders as he possibly can. So he is a dangerous actor to Iran, and so a rogue state leader essentially. And basically, they view him as a terrorist, and with some reason. And so they're going to try to restore deterrence, just as we talk about restoring deterrence against Iran. We're the ones that are doing all the wars of aggression. So they want to restore deterrence against the U.S. and Israel, meaning that they want to deliver us such massive costs, militarily, but primarily economically, that we will never want to repeat this fiasco ever again. So what they're demanding is that the U.S. pull all of its military forces out of the Persian Gulf. We close our bases in Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates minimally, and basically concede the Persian Gulf as an Iranian lake, which is what it is. President Trump, everything that President Trump said he was fighting the war to prevent, he has caused. He said we had to fight to start the war so they wouldn't bomb our military bases. Iran's been destroying our military bases, so to defend Israel. So Iran wouldn't attack Israel with their missiles. That's what they've been doing. Tel Aviv's been on fire. They keep hitting Israeli targets, killing Israeli citizens. So to guarantee that the Strait of Hormuz would remain open, they closed the strait. There's nothing we can do about it. Probably the best idea that you just mentioned is we could, drop the 82nd Airborne, drop them on parachutes, maybe from, relatively low altitude, because Iranian air defenses are apparently a little less effective than their anti-ship missiles. If we could neutralize the air defenses in the region, we could drop airborne forces. Because if we bring amphibious warfare ships like the USS Tripoli, which is an amphibious assault ship, that's going to get sunk. It's going to get hit.
Right.
There's so many narrow waters in the Persian Gulf, especially in the Strait of Hormuz, which is only 22 miles wide. It's the same distance as the Strait of Dover in the English Channel. They're just going to get pummeled with anti-ship missiles from the missile boats, from land, torpedoes from submarines potentially. Those are less effective, I think, than the anti-ship missiles. So it's really going to, we could have thousands of casualties within 1 week of that operation being ordered. So
I'm concerned. So some of the different things that I've been hearing is the coastline, the actual coastline of Iran has a lot of cliffs, has a mountain range. And they're saying they probably have a lot of tunnels with a lot of artillery pointing at that specific island. And they would pummel the crap out of it and would wipe out our forces if we were to land. And that is something that terrifies me, because if something like that happens, I could see the American public saying, that's it, we're going all in, nuke them. We're going to send in big forces, and then we're 100,000 troops. Now, one question that I have is, so let me stop there. Do you see that could happen? Have you heard the same thing, that coastline has a bunch of artillery surrounding it from the mountain ranges that are right up to the coastline?
I haven't heard that, but I've known obviously that Iran has a huge number of missile sites, underground missile sites, so they could pummel it, whether it's artillery or missiles. Probably doesn't matter a whole lot. Obviously, artillery is easier, assuming that we can target it. Some Iranian missiles can fire from underground, just right out of the sand.
Right.
So that's a pretty impressive capability that we didn't know existed before, and then they're basically undetectable and undestroyable. So I do think that's likely the case. I'd have to recheck the distance between Iran's mainland coast and Kark Island, but I would suspect it's probably in around 12 miles away from Kark Island, or maybe even 10, or perhaps even less. So I think if you take away the missile threat, the idea of taking over Iran's islands in the Persian Gulf actually make logical sense, because it's something achievable. If we didn't have our amphibious warfare ships sunk on the way entrance into the Persian Gulf, then that's something we can do, and we could permanently occupy them or use them as leverage to get better peace terms from Iran. But because they can sink our ships, obviously it's been 2 to 3 weeks. I think it's been 2 weeks since Iran closed the straits, and Trump hasn't done anything about it. It's not because he doesn't want to. It's because we don't have the capability. The U.S. Navy, he's pleading to other countries. He's like, please, China, come save me, because I'm in this mess that I created. And China's laughing.
Germany, UK, France. So here's
the same thing that Biden did when he shared top secret intelligence with Xi Jinping that Putin was planning to invade Ukraine. He's like, please tell Putin, we don't want him to invade Ukraine. And Xi was like, are you kidding me? We'd love to see him invade Ukraine. They're close allies.
Yeah. Well, here's something that so the neocon wing, the Ben Shapiro types, and I think Ben Shapiro, when it comes to, and why do I mention Ben Shapiro so often? Is he Israeli first, or is he America first? I don't know. he definitely is very pro-Israeli. I believe he's pretty much a neocon, and one of his statements is, um, you know, we're winning this war. I've heard him say it frequently recently. We're winning the war. Our allies in the region are supporting us, and I'm like, where's Saudi Arabia? Where's Dubai? Where's the UEA or UAE? You know, where are all these guys? None of them are coming in and fighting back in any way, shape, or form. What's going on there? I mean, so I'm going to say we are on our own. It is Israel and America, and that's it. In fact, if I understand correctly, Iran put out, hey, all you countries that have not attacked the United States, we'll let you pass through. So basically, it's the United States and Israel. If you have ships that go through there, we will attack them. The rest of them will let go. What is your information on that?
Well, as far as Ben Shapiro, he's a Jew. He married an Israeli citizen. He's Israel first. He's always been Israel
Right.
first, America last. He's a neocon. He's never met a war that he didn't support, especially in the Middle East. And so he's like Mark Levin or Lindsey Graham. His
Right.
allegiance is primarily to Israel, secondarily to America. So I used to like him on a lot of different issues. I always disagree with him on the Iraq war. He still thinks that was a great idea. And of course, Iraq is now basically controlled by Iran, Iranian proxies, which Bush meekly delivered to Iran back in 2005. So, basically every war that we fight in the Middle East makes Iran more powerful, even this one, because we've handed them control of the Persian Gulf, and now they're intimidating our Gulf state allies into thinking that maybe we shouldn't allow the U.S. military bases to be rebuilt because they shifted. Trump made a decision to only protect Israel. He shifted all our missile defenses from the Gulf state countries to Israel because he knew that Israel didn't have enough interceptors to shoot down all of Iranians' missiles and drones. So they view that as a betrayal. Our alliances have been severely impacted. They're not going to do the Abraham Accords. They're never doing that again. Saudi Arabia, of course, was close to that before the Gaza war disrupted that. And of course, Israeli genocide as well, killing mass murdering 58,000 civilians in Gaza. You asked the question. I don't know if it was in this round of questions or the previous one. How is this impacting Russia and China? And the answer is Russia and China are the big winners. Iran wins by not losing. The U.S. is losing by not winning. And so in Russia and China, so we're being weakened economically, militarily. The price of gas, I think, is on track to double from an average of $2.94 to $5.84. So that's almost 100% increase in price. That's going to have a severe impact.
It's gone up over 80 cents in 2 weeks.
That's correct, 80 cents. So it's going to be almost $3 before this thing is over if it continues the next 3 months. And that's going to massively increase the price, cost of living. It's going to, everyone's going to blame Trump. This is Trump's war. All our Middle Eastern allies, even our NATO allies, Trump is he's actually, kind of threatening to pull out of NATO. If there's one good thing.
Please do. That's one thing, Trump, I'm going to say, please do pull us out of NATO. Yeah. I would agree with that.
If he could end that war and the Ukraine war and pull us out of NATO, I'd say it's all worth it.
Yes.
That would be it. It's never going to happen, but I love just thinking about it makes me happy because that NATO is the very symbol. It's of America's empire, and once if the U.S. were to pull out, America's empire is over, and we can return to being a peace-loving constitutional republic like we were before World War II.
So this is one thing I'd whispered in Donald Trump's ear. We're over there by the request of Germany, France, United Kingdom, as far as in Ukraine, right?
Yes.
They want us over there. They want us doing this. Okay. So we fire up another war in Iran. You think, okay, we're taking care of you guys here and helping Russia be fought. Well, why don't you come and support us? Oh, we don't want to do that. That's not our war. Okay. Well, okay, it's not in NATO's best interest. Okay, got it. Well, guess what? Then this is showing that we need to put a stick of dynamite in NATO, just blow it up, and we need to take our ball and go home. Let's leave Germany. Let's leave. And I'd say to Saudi Arabia and Qatar and all those countries, we're sorry for the inconvenience. Would you like us to just pack up and go home? My guess is they would say probably no. I would still say, well, you haven't come to help. I mean, hey, Donald Trump, your allies did not have your back, so this is, I must admit, this is me manipulating a little bit here, but I'd say, hey, they didn't have your back. They said they gave you the middle finger and said, we're not going to help out. We're not going to be a part of this. Okay, let's go home. Let's go back to our hemisphere and just deal with our hemisphere. That would make me, I think that's what we need to do, because I think this is shown. NATO has no desire to help out the United States. Now, Israel, the little weasels, the state of Israel. Let me be very clear. The state of Israel, the Netanyahu bunch, the little weasels that they are, they will cause us to get entangled and to take the lumps and to spend billions and trillions of dollars, and it only helps them, makes them more powerful.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. Let's take the marbles and go home, pull out of the Middle East, pull out of Europe. That's essentially what Trump's national security strategy stated. We wouldn't, he didn't say we pull all our troops out, but it said we give basically main responsibility for deterrence in the Middle East to Israel. So we would no longer carry the water for them. In Europe, it'd be the same thing. We wouldn't have ground forces in Europe, so we wouldn't be in the Baltics, we wouldn't be in Poland. Might pull our forces back to Germany, or might pull them all out altogether. There were some implications as to that as well with Elbridge Colby and also Secretary of War Hegseth, even, and J.D. Vance. So that would be a really awesome outcome if we were to do that. And then Trump could invade Greenland and go to war with Denmark and maybe NATO, and we could have a quick war, and that would be an easy war to win. There's no way that NATO, your former European allies and NATO would fight a war with us. That they
okay. So is that tongue in cheek? Is that tongue in cheek? Okay,
I'm serious.
Wow.
Yeah, let's bring it on. Denmark is a war we can win. Iran is an unwinnable war, and the longer we're in this war, the greater the benefit to Russia. Already. And I'm not sure if you've heard this or not, but Trump has lifted, sanctions on Russian oil, which is increasing their oil revenues by $55 billion a year. How much does it cost for Russia to fight the war in Ukraine? I'm guessing probably maybe $100 billion a year, if that, maybe less. So, he's really financing Putin's war now, essentially.
So
that's
I
the
actually
argument we've heard from the neocons.
You are going right where I wanted to go next. I wanted to say, okay, so how is this hurt China and how is this Russia? The only way that it's possibly hurt China a little bit is that they don't have as much oil coming to them, quite as much oil as they did pre-war, but they still have tankers going through that are still delivering them crude oil, correct?
No, I've actually heard the exact opposite. I've heard that the oil shipments from Iran to China have actually substantially increased over the last 2 weeks over the previous 2 weeks before the war. So Iran is letting all their, obviously they control the straits, we don't. And the U.S. Navy is not implementing the counter blockade, because we do have the capability to implement a counter blockade. Right. We could, Iran could let the Chinese tankers through, and then we could intercept them, and then China could deploy their Navy to try to counter that. We could have, the Battle of Jutland, I guess, or the Battle of Leyte Gulf, and we might be on the losing end of that. But I do think the U.S. Navy is superior certainly in terms of tonnage and carriers and training and whatnot. But in terms of anti-ship missiles, I think they have a lot more advanced anti-ship missiles than we have. But if we were fighting away from their coast, we would have a fighting chance to win that, assuming it remained non-nuclear and they didn't use all their super weapons, of which they have a whole bunch.
Right.
that they could use to take us out, or simply to make our weapons not work, or even use them against us. So um, it's interesting. Yeah, Trump is doing all this, of
So
course.
it's strengthening China. China's getting more oil. There's no
Yep,
there's no negative. The only
no
negative that
downside.
I see, the only downside I see for Russia is they're not getting the drones that they were getting before. But on the counter of that, they're now Russia is now selling more oil than it was. We've lifted the sanction to selling them oil. They're selling it for more. They're making more money than before. I think this is just net benefit for both China and for Russia. And on top of that, another way that it's helping them is because it's hurting us and depleting us of all of the missile interceptors and everything along those lines. It's hurting us there.
Yeah, so in terms of the Iranian drones, I think Russia had stopped buying Iranian drones because they're mass producing more advanced versions in Russia. They're last I heard,
Really?
they're producing 55,000 upgraded Shihad drones. They have a different name for the Russian version, but they're even more advanced than what Iran sold them at the beginning of the war. So literally, there's no downside for Russia. There's no downside for China. China is seeing our missile defenses in Japan and South Korea are being relocated to the Middle East,
Right.
along with some of our Pacific naval vessels. So they're starting to mass troops along their coastline with Taiwan. They're having some various naval, different, a lot more air power that's going over the Taiwan Strait. So they're, last I heard, they're prepping to make a move on, invade or blockade Taiwan either probably next month or possibly as late as October if this war continues. So Trump can preempt that. He can preempt that by ending the war now on Iran's terms. Have a humiliating retreat, but it's not going to be a catastrophic defeat because we won't have our ship sunk. We won't have thousands of Marines killed off, so we can recover. We during Reagan's entire term, we didn't have any troops in the Middle East. People forget that we did have U.S. naval escort missions during the mid '80s when Iran tried to cut off oil tanker shipments through the Strait of Hormuz. I think that lasted maybe a year or less. And that was very successful, but the balance of power has shifted. They didn't have anti-ship missiles to the extent they have now, and we didn't have ground troops there. It wasn't until Bush invaded Iraq in 1991 that we started having a massive ground presence. So we can be a superpower without having any troops whatsoever in the Middle East, and Trump should realize that and really just he could spin it as a win. He could say, well, I was going to pull him out anyway. I pulled him out of Iraq and Syria, and you can see all the articles that said I was going to do that, and I'd already
totally spin it. Just I just wanted to see all along if NATO was going to support us in a. Are they going to be good team players like we've been taking care of them? I mean that's totally a Trump thing, right?
Yeah, he could do that, and his America First, supporters or his MAGA supporters would be none the wiser. He could say whatever he wants, and I would switch back to supporting him. If he did that,
Right.
it's this. This is just like this is a bleeding sore on MAGA that's splitting us in half. Millions of American First conservatives may sit out the November election because they're so pissed at him for driving the cost of living up unnecessarily, fuel prices, risking, killing off hundreds or thousands of U.S. military servicemen. Lots of families are going to get touched just if he does this amphibious invasion or air assault, invasion. So these three islands that are probably the most strategic in the Persian Gulf. So he has the ability, just like Joe Kent said, he has the cards. The fate of America is in his hands, and if he makes the right decision, he can return it to being a great president. And if not, he's going to be considered one of the worst presidents in U.S. history, and rightfully so.
So I just pulled up gas prices. So right before this all launched, gas where I'm at was like 253, 254, 255. It's now 353. And that's at one of the cheaper places. to buy gasoline. So the bottom line is this is really hurting the American public. And we get up into that $4 a gallon range, which looks like we're way on our well on our way there. That's going to be hurting a lot of Americans. That hurts quite a bit. Okay, let's get into and to some extent we've covered some of the points of your article. Trump starts a dangerous, unnecessary, and unprovoked regional war of choice with Iran. Let me read this headline. While Trump's war in Iran may not have expanded into World War III yet, it has opened a powder keg and a ripple effect of which could transform the region and the world order against the U.S. Amen. We're not at World War III yet, but there's a part of me that's going, what, how much more does Iran want to take before they do launch their super EMPs and they do really start attacking? Supposedly there was an attack on a large regional hospital chain. I think it was yesterday. So how much more are they going to take before they start, retaliating?
Well, I mean, they have retaliated. They, damaged or destroyed U.S. bases. One thing they haven't done yet that I find curious is they haven't really engaged in any major attacks on U.S. Navy vessels. They have this massive anti-ship missile capability, long range, hypersonics, more advanced anti-ship missiles by far than anything we have. Our Tomahawks are a joke, compared to theirs, and Russia's and China's, and probably North Korea's as well. They all have much more advanced anti-ship missiles than we have. Ours are all subsonic. Theirs are supersonic.
David, you're scaring me. You're scaring me. I'm not liking what I'm hearing.
Yeah, we have, like I said, we have the best Navy, but we have, in terms of anti-ship missiles, we're outclassed by our enemies, mainly Russia and China, but also Iran. So, heck, even the Yemeni, the Houthis have more advanced, anti-ship missiles than we have. They have anti-ship ballistic missiles that we don't have. They have Mach 4 supersonic anti-ship missiles we don't have, cruise missiles. Wow. So, we've really fallen behind in technology. It used to be, obviously during the 80s, we were like a generation ahead. Even as recently as like 2000 or, the Iraq War, we were a generation ahead, not of Russia, but of China. And that's just been a race. Russia and China have probably as of a decade or a little less than that, have exceeded us in a lot of different conventional warfare capabilities. And obviously new classes of nuclear weapons and both delivery systems and strategic and non-strategic, and also the warheads themselves. We can't continue operating under this illusion that this is a unipolar order or the U.S. is the dominant superpower, because we're just not. And this is, I predicted that if this war continues, Iran will be considered the graveyard of the U.S. empire. And the danger is that we don't lose our empire, we might lose our homeland, our country as well. So, it'd be great to lose our empire. It might even be worth the loss of a few thousand troops if that's what Trump wants to do. But if we lose our country, it's over. Russia and China can rule the world.
Here's another, let's get into another part. Trump blows his election-winning MAGA coalition. Back when you wrote your piece on the 8th, it said earlier today. So let's see. Oh, wait a minute. Let me make sure I'm right on March 5th. Earlier today, President Donald Trump got angry at America First conservatives Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly. Megyn Kelly, I'm not too concerned about. I think she's a dishonest actor, in my opinion. But Tucker Carlson, you should be very worried about Donald Trump if you've lost someone who is clear of you. Let's not forget Marjorie Taylor Greene. Basically, he got her, ran her out of Congress. So you had already shared this before, fracturing MAGA, but that is one of the I think that's one of the worst things, because, and this is another thing I'd say to Donald Trump. Donald Trump, you got to figure this out within your party. You can't destroy MAGA. You need those guys. I don't need anybody. Yeah, you do. Do you want to be impeached? Okay, maybe you may not get removed from office, but you might. And let's just say that you don't get removed from office, but you get impeached. The Democrats are going to, if you lose the House and you lose the Senate, you're going to be having so many problems from the Democrats up in your business all the time. You're not going to get anything else done.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. So Trump, I think the Republicans currently have like a 4-vote majority in the House. I mean, I don't remember in my lifetime a time when we had a 4-vote majority in the House. It's like 218 to 214.
Right.
So we need 217, I think, minimum. We can only lose 1 vote, which is, sometimes it's Massey, Thomas Massey, American First Conservative hero that Trump hates so much. He's
Yes.
It's so funny. Trump has went down to campaign in this district, and before the Iran war, it was a close race. Like it was a 5 to 10 point race where Massey was only leading by like 5 to 10 points. Now he's leading by 30 points. The more Trump fights the war, the more he comes down to campaign for his America Last opponent, a rhino opponent of Massey, the more Massey goes up in the polls. So this just shows that, putting America first is really an election winning. You win elections. You do the right thing. You put America first. You implement a conservative agenda of peace through strength. You win elections. Trump is doing the exact opposite of that. He's going beyond what even Joe Biden was willing to do. He's being John McCain. No U.S. president was stupid enough to bomb Iran. He not only bombed Iran, just in June with a 1-day war. He's now on a 17-day war. And in a war that's likely to go on for many months, or if not years. So he's really, the American people, certainly the youth, the young adult vote, the independent vote, all those folks they're going to vote for the party of peace. And right now we're the party of war. So they're going to vote us out of office. We got elected as a Republican majority and, President Trump in the White House because he ran as the party of peace. So, against the Ukraine war, he said he would end the Ukraine war on day one. He never has done anything like that. He has refused to negotiate a direct peace deal with Russia. So, he's given that up. He's fighting the Ukraine war. He's fighting a war against Venezuela. He's fighting a war maybe against Cuba. We're not sure yet, but he basically said, if I want to take over, I will. It's mine to take over. And now he's trying to take over Iran and turn that into a colony as well. So the one thing about strategy, I know I've mentioned this before, but on your show, but one of the principal axioms of strategy is you only fight one war at a time. And Trump is notorious for, his attention span is really minimal. So he's talking about multiple wars at the same time. Right now, he's only fighting one major war. And if he wasn't fighting a major war, he'd find a new country to want to threaten to invade, probably Cuba. He'd probably be surrounding, have it blockaded and all that. And I don't think that would be a bad thing necessarily. I've wanted to take back Cuba for a long time, ever since the fall of the Soviet Union. So I'd love to see that. I'd love to see us be a hemispheric superpower and pull out of Europe and the Middle East.
Here is I also wanted to hit a couple other points within your article. You have a poll. President Trump handling of Iran has made the U.S. Safer. 29% of people say safer, 51% say less safe, and 19% say no difference. So 51% of the population say that this war with handling of Iran is 51%. 51% say they are less safe. That's a number that's going to cost you some elections. And
this is a Fox News poll.
Yes, that's a Fox News poll. Okay, what are your thoughts on the 25th Amendment? I'm hearing a lot of people saying Donald Trump has lost his cookies. Let's 25th Amendment him. And I'm hearing that from the right, the kind of the Marjorie Taylor, Tucker Carlson wing group. I love that Thomas Massey is hanging in there stronger. To the people, all the people of Kentucky, why don't we make Thomas Massey your next senator and get rid of Cocaine Mitch, as Rush Limbaugh called him?
Well, yeah, now Thomas Massey is being talked about as Rand Paul's running mate, maybe J.D. Vance's running mate. I mean, I think that'd be an outstanding choice. I mean, can you imagine having two America First conservatives? You know, we thought it was Trump and Vance. Trump obviously was never really America First. He just used that as a way to get elected.
Right.
I mean, I think he was sincere about being a peace president in his first term, but and probably even when he ran the second or the third time. But obviously he's changed. But that would be a really powerful ticket, is, you know, a J.D. Vance and Thomas Massey. But yeah, I mean, it is encouraging to see you know, Massey do so well.
So 25th Amendment.
I think that you know, the 25th Amendment is definitely warranted. I've been calling for that for almost 2 weeks now. I think J.D. Vance is well within his you know, his limits to do that. The problem is most of the cabinet are neocons, you know, and even
Right.
Hank Seth is now defected. So, you know, J.D. Vance could get maybe Tulsi, you know, but basically anyone who's in the minority and, you know, and trying to remove Trump, he would fire, you know, the next day, you know. So there has to be a majority. No cabinet secretary is principal. Not even, you know, Tulsi Gabbard, I don't think, as a member of the cabinet, is willing to, you know, stick their neck out and, you know, and say, let's remove Trump from office. If they took a poll, if they met, you know, away from Trump and there was a majority and they signed on to it, then I'm all for it. But I really think it's unrealistic. And what I found out recently is with the 25th Amendment, you know, 2/3 of both houses of Congress have to vote to uphold it if it's challenged. So Trump could say, hey, I was removed, you know, I have my wits. There's no basis. I'm not, you know, I'm saying I just, you know, passed one of my fake cognitive tests. You know, in flying colors, I got every question right. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. You know, I'm not senile. I'm not demented. And then it would go to Congress, and of course, you know, we wouldn't get 2/3 to remove him. You know, keep him removed, and J.D. Vance could be president for a week or a few days, and then power would go back to Trump. And obviously, J.D. Vance can't be removed, but his constitutional responsibilities are pretty meager, you know, in terms of what he actually can do if the president doesn't involve him in the administration. So he would stick around, you know, just in kind of symbolism, I guess. You know, he wouldn't be able to really do much, and then Trump could purge his cabinet of anyone who he believes was disloyal. So I do think impeachment and removal is the best option. Obviously, we know there'll be Democrat majorities in the House and Senate. Sadly, I don't want to see that, but you know, I think the Republicans have squandered their majority and you know, have lost their mandate, and so going against their base. So you never want to go against your base, because those are the guys that get you elected. So definitely Trump's going to be impeached. The only question is how many Republicans would vote to remove him if the war is still continuing and we've suffered thousands of U.S. military casualties.
Okay, so if we suffer thousands of military casualties, I think there's a possibility you could have it. I don't think it would happen. I would be very surprised that he'd be removed from office, because in order to impeach, I think all impeachment takes is just a majority of Congress. To remove takes 2/3 on the Senate side, and I just don't know that we'll find that.
Yeah, I think there's probably going to be, we'll probably see a flip. We'll probably see the Democrats take net six seats. So they'll go from a 53-47 minority to a 53-47 majority. And that would mean that 14 Senate Republicans would have to vote to remove him from office. And I think that's not very likely, because they're almost all neocons in the Senate. You know, Senate Republicans are even more neocon than the House Republicans. So, you know, they're not going to want to impeach him over something that they feel was a good thing with the Iran war. So basically what I'm saying is, if the Iran war would have to be super unpopular, like, 70-30, 75-25% against the war. And we'd have to lose probably 10,000 U.S. military casualties before I think that could happen.
So
or a massive attack on the U.S. homeland, like a massive attack, like a cyber attack that almost takes down our critical infrastructure.
Or Iran decides they're going to do an EMP blast.
Well, then for elections, the government would cease, wouldn't be able to communicate, and our country would cease to exist, and we'd break apart.
Right. So let me read a couple headlines, folks, that he's got in this, in his article and his Substack. And let me restate the your Substack. Your Substack is dpyne.substack.com. And this is the March 5th article that you put out. Trump starts a dangerous, unnecessary, and unprovoked regional war of choice within Iran. And I love some of these headlines that you have. Trump has lied us into Iraq 2.0. Another one that I really liked is Trump committing war crimes against Iran. Boy, this is worth looking into, folks. Trump's Archduke Ferdinand moment. And then another one, Trump's war on Iran has created potential existing risks to the U.S. You talk about the EMP blast and in the EMP blast radius. And then you also mentioned how Trump lost my support. Basically saying he's become John McCain 2.0, who he definitely spoke against when he was running for office. We're at 5 minutes. We're at 5:30. You said you needed to get rolling about 5:30. So I want to turn the floor over to you. Please tell people how they can find out about you both on X, your Substack, and then any last thoughts that you want to cover that we haven't covered so far.
Yeah, well, I'd like to thank you for inviting me back on your show and having me on every month. It's always fun to do a summary of all the month's bad news, I guess. All the disasters that Trump and the neocons are leading us into, and it's only fun until it gets really bad. I mean, we're at a point where it's kind of an inflection point where our country could go down the tubes at any moment. There's no security. The U.S. has no national security. Essentially, we have no defense against super EMP weapons. We have almost no defense against nuclear missiles. We can our defenses against cyber attack are quite minimal as well. If our satellites get attacked, they could be taken out. If we don't strike first, in terms of counter space attacks, then we could be blinded. So the U.S. we've lost our national security, and the way to restore it is to implement President Trump's outstanding national defense strategy and national security strategy. He literally just published an amazing national defense strategy in January, and then 5 weeks later he starts bombing Iran. 5 or 6 weeks. It's all it took for him to throw his awesome national defense strategy in the trash can. So he's doing the exact opposite of what his national defense strategy said that he wanted to do in his administration. So all we need him to do, we need all of your viewers, everyone, all the Tucker Carlson supporters, all the America First conservatives, and as many of our policymakers as possible, especially in Congress, to Mike Lee. Where's Mike Lee on this? He's supporting the war. He doesn't even care about the war. That's the crazy thing. He was anti-Ukraine war. He and J.D. Vance were the two leaders against the Ukraine war, Biden's war in Ukraine. But because it's Trump fighting a forever war in Iran, it's not a big deal. I'm sure it will be a big deal. I think he'll switch sides once we have about 200, 300, 400 dead, which is coming. It could happen. It could happen in one day. We could lose the carrier.
There's some saying that it's already happened. We're just holding back the numbers.
Lives. No, I think that's true, and it's interesting that President Trump stated he was interviewed, and he's like, yeah, those are the casualties that you think they are, but they might be a lot higher. So he obviously had the intel, that he knew that the casualties were higher. At least that's the implication of what he said, is that he had intel leading him to believe that our military casualties were much higher than what were reported, and he even joked about it. So he's there's a lot of cover-ups. There's a lot he's covering up the extent to which Iran is hitting our bases, destroying our bases, killing and wounding our soldiers. Every few days there's a new cover-up that's been exposed in the New York Times, the Washington Post, or other in the Guardian in the UK about all the lies, all the cover-ups. So we're kind of in a modern day Vietnam right now, early stages, but the stakes are much higher because North Vietnam didn't pose us a threat. And just to remind your viewers, we dropped the equivalent of about 500 Hiroshima atomic bombs on North Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, and we lost the war. We won every battle, but we lost the war. So, Trump likes, and Hegseth, they like to focus on how many Iranian leaders we've killed, how many ships we've sunk, how many missiles he claims that we destroyed. None of that really matters unless we can retake control of the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz. Unless we can find a way to overthrow the regime or get them to accept a status quo peace, we're going to lose the war. Based on the objectives that Trump has stated, those are unachievable objectives, short of deploying 500,000 troops and invading Iran. And even then, as you mentioned, Iran has some crazy mountainous terrain. I mean, just rows and rows of mountains, the Zagreb Mountains, just continue for probably hundreds of miles. So, the 10th Mountain Division isn't big enough to be able to, we don't have enough mountain troops to fight that war. And even if we did, they could, that terrain really favors the defender, and they have probably 1 million mobilizable troops they could use to fight us. So we would be outnumbered. Go ahead. Continue. Yeah, I was just finishing my thought. I think it's just absurd. I think no sane or rational president would have ordered this war. He should have listened to the National Intelligence Council that published a report the week before he attacked Iran that warned him not to do it. He should have listened to J.D. Vance, Tulsi Gabbard. He should have listened to General Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the director of the Joint Staff that Trump fired, a 3-star admiral. All of whom warned him not to do this, that the costs and risks far outweighed the benefits. And Trump did it anyway. And now he's acting all surprised. And he's claiming, no one told me that they could shut down the strait or that they would attack all these countries, on day one of the war. Iran had a very sophisticated plan to win a little, asymmetrically and defeat us, and to basically kick us out of the region and the Persian Gulf. And so far, their plan is, I think it's proceeding according to plan, and ours isn't.
Yes. I think their plan is working very well. Another thing that worries me is that the Kurds haven't jumped into this battle. That's one thing.
They're not going to. They've said they're not going to, and Trump said he just, after they said no to his asking them to join the war, he said, we don't want them. It's yes. always we don't want them after they say no. He begs them to
and so my point is we have so many people. There's so many people saying we're not jumping in. Donald Trump it's time to go home. It's time to be done. Let's get out of this before it gets any worse. We've lost some American lives. Declare victory. You've set back Iran. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe
you can lie again and say we totally obliterated their nuclear program for the second time in 9 months. And we wiped out their ballistic missiles, and they still control the Persian Gulf, but they're not that powerful anymore. So we degraded their military, and a lot of that will be true. And we killed the Ayatollah. And
we destroyed their navy.
And we sunk all their main ships, the frigates, and their corvettes. And you know what? If you judge the war on an operational basis, he can legitimately say it was a victory. Strategically, it's going to be a defeat, no matter how much he spends it. But he can trick a lot of people to sell it as spin it as a victory. And And that's what we want. That's what we want them to do. We want them to declare a victory, spin it as a victory, and get us out.
And pull us out of NATO. And pull us out.
Pull us out of NATO. Yeah. That'd be amazing. Then he'd have all these extra troops to invade Cuba with. I wouldn't be opposed to an amphibious invasion of Cuba.
Well,
that's the real threat.
We'll save that for another day. I made a commitment to let you get out of here about 5:30, and it's now almost 5:40. So I want to say thank you for taking way longer and being way more generous with your time than you said you were going to be able to. Folks, the reason why David's taken off is because in Utah, tonight is caucus night for the Republican Party. Please go to your local caucus. You don't necessarily need to go to the Republican one. If you're independent, you're with the there's a number of others that will be meeting tonight. And if you're a neocon, go with the Democrats. They let everybody in. So David, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for joining us. Will you please tell people how they can find you on X and your different social websites, as well as your Substack?
Yeah, of course, I'm on Facebook. Just look up my name, and I'm also on, X. My handle is @AmericaFirstCon. Once again, @AmericaFirstCon. My X followers have more than doubled the first 2.5 weeks of the war. So hopefully that will continue. Yeah, thanks. I must be doing something right in terms of some of my posts and analysis. And then, of course, my Real War Substack is at tpyne.substack.com. Once again, tpyne.substack.com.
Okay, I'm going to say thank you to you off air. So first of all, let me just say thank you to the audience, folks. Appreciate you joining us today. Go to kmmu.org, and once you go there, like and subscribe to us, as well as on our different X platform, YouTube, and Rumble. Appreciate you being here. Thank you for being here today. This has been Talk with Jon. Look forward to seeing you again.